Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep on the aftermath of this election.
This election.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Trump back in the White House, can you believe it?
I know.
You've given us a lot to work with here. So many sources.
Sure.
News reports, expert takes, even some first-hand accounts.
Tried to give you a good mix.
And wow, there is a lot to unpack.
I know, right? It's,
Where do we even start?
Well, one thing that really fascinates me is how these sources, they kind of go beyond just the headlines.
Right.
They really give us this picture of what's going on beneath the surface in America.
Mhm.
Like all the economic anxieties, the cultural divides, even the
Yeah.
questions people are starting to ask about our institutions,
Okay, so you've got me hooked.
Good.
Where do we even begin?
Let's start with the immediate aftermath, shall we?
Okay.
You included coverage from Fox News Live from November 9th, 2024.
Oh, yeah, right as the results were coming in.
Exactly.
I remember watching that night. It was tense.
Oh, absolutely.
Nail biter.
And the Fox News report, it really highlights a few key things right off the bat.
Okay.
First of all,
Yep.
Trump, he secured over 300 electoral votes.
Wow.
Took key battleground states like Nevada.
Nevada.
But you know what really struck me?
What's that?
Control of the House was still up in the air.
Oh, that's right.
Several races in California hadn't been called yet.
Ugh, California, always taking their sweet time, right?
Right.
But seriously, what impact could that have on a Trump presidency?
You know, that's a great question because it injects this, huge amount of uncertainty into everything.
Uncertainty, yeah.
I mean, imagine if the House ends up with this, slim Democratic majority
Oh, okay.
or even a split.
Ooh,
It could really hinder Trump's ability to push through his
a
agenda.
gridlock.
Exactly.
So even with this decisive win, it's not going to be smooth sailing for Trump.
Not at all.
And then, on top of all that, there's the news that broke just a day after the election, the alleged Iranian plot to assassinate Trump.
Right. Talk about a shockwave.
I remember that. Like, it just stopped everything.
It was huge.
It was huge.
And, you included reporting on this from Fox News, which cites an FBI statement alleging that Faraj Shakiri, he's a 51-year-old Iranian,
No.
they say he was working with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard to plan an attack.
Wow, that's chilling stuff.
Scary
It
stuff.
really makes you wonder,
Mm.
was this a reaction to Trump winning
Mm.
or something that was already in motion?
That's a question for the FBI to figure out.
Right.
But the timing is certainly significant.
Definitely adds another layer of tension to this transition of power.
Oh, without a doubt.
Speaking of the transition, Fox News also mentioned that Trump and Biden are scheduled to meet at the White House on Wednesday.
That's right.
Do you think that's going to be civil, given the circumstances?
Well, let's put it this way. I wouldn't expect a warm hug and a chat about the Rose Garden, considering their history. But, beyond the optics,
Mm-hmm.
this Iranian plot could really cast a shadow over their first meeting.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then, of course, there's the political firestorm this has ignited.
You're talking about how some critics are linking this assassination attempt to Biden's policy of easing sanctions on Iran.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The argument is that lifting those sanctions gave Iran more resources,
Right.
which they could then use for these kinds of operations.
So it plays right into those anxieties about national security.
No, absolutely.
Which, let's be honest, were a big part of this election.
Strut and setter.
It's like this alleged plot has become Exhibit A in the debate about Biden's foreign policy.
You could say that.
So, okay, let's recap.
Okay.
Potentially hostile House, looming international threat, tense transition process.
You got it.
Sounds like Trump has his work cut out for him.
Oh, absolutely.
But amidst all this chaos, he's already started making key appointments.
He has.
You noted that Susie Wiles,
Yeah.
who was super important to his Florida victory,
It's instrumental.
has been named Chief of Staff,
Big news.
the first woman Chief of Staff.
Historic.
That's a pretty big deal.
It is. It speaks to the trust Trump has in her,
Hmm.
but it also reflects something bigger.
What's that?
This changing face of American politics.
You mean the growing influence of women in positions of power?
Exactly. And not just gender,
Okay.
but ethnicity and background, too.
Right, right.
Think about the Hispanic vote, for example.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Trump saw record support from Hispanic voters,
Especially men.
particularly men, yes.
And everyone's got a theory.
Oh, I know.
Some say it's about economics. Others say it's more about cultural alignment with the Republican Party.
Right.
What do you make of it?
Well, one of the sources you shared really stood out to me.
Oh, yeah.
Steve Cortez. He's a political commentator for Fox News.
Okay.
He argues that this is what he calls
Yeah.
patriotic populism among Hispanic voters.
Okay, interesting.
And he also points to this disillusionment with the Democrats, especially among men
I can see that.
who feel like they're being unfairly targeted or demonized, as he puts it.
Interesting. So it's not just about economics or policy.
Yeah.
It's about identity, belonging,
Yeah,
and how those things are perceived within each party.
exactly.
And this shift,
Yeah, you've got a quote from him where he criticizes the Democrats,
Yeah.
saying they're disconnected from the working class.
that's familiar territory for him.
It is.
But it seems to resonate more after this election.
It does, doesn't it?
And it's not just coming from the progressives.
No, you're right.
You also included an interview with Congressman Jake Auchincloss.
A more centrist Democrat.
Right.
He acknowledges that a lot of voters see the Democrats as condescending.
Out of touch.
Out of touch, yes, with everyday Americans.
He even says
It does.
that many voters feel like Democrats are talking down to them.
Yeah, it's got a sting for the Democrat strategists.
And to make things worse,
What's that?
he calls out inflation
Inflation.
as a major factor in their loss.
An inflation hangover, he called it.
Oh, that's a good one.
Voters just couldn't shake it, he said.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Oh.
Tell me more.
Most economists,
Yeah.
they agree that Biden's handing Trump a strong economy.
Hmm.
So if the numbers are good.
Why are voters feeling so economically insecure?
Right. That's the question.
Is it perception?
Is that
Or is it something deeper?
It really makes you think.
It does.
Are they reacting to reality or to how that reality is being presented?
Mm.
Are Democrats failing to communicate their successes?
Maybe they need a better PR team.
Maybe.
But seriously, sounds like the Democrats have some soul-searching to do.
I think they do.
And not just about the economy.
Right.
The Washington Post editorial board raised concerns about Kamala Harris
Kamala Harris.
during the campaign.
Oh, right.
They took issue with how she defended Biden's mental acuity.
Yes, his mental acuity.
They suggest that her defense might have backfired,
Backfired.
made her seem less credible.
Possibly damaging her future.
Ouch. Sounds like the Democrats are facing a credibility crisis.
You could say that.
But, hey, maybe they can take a page out of Trump's playbook.
Oh.
Turn this defeat into a comeback story.
Stranger things have happened, that's for sure.
It's true.
But I think it's important to remember that the divisions in this country,
Yeah.
they run deeper than just party affiliation.
That's true.
And we're seeing those divisions play out
Rare.
in some pretty unexpected places.
Right.
Like what happened with FEMA after the hurricane in Florida.
Oh, yeah, that FEMA story.
A doozy.
You included a report that a FEMA official was removed from their position
That's right.
for allegedly telling relief workers to bypass homes with pro-Trump signs.
Can you believe that?
It sounds like a political thriller.
It does.
And Governor DeSantis,
DeSantis.
he didn't hold back.
He did not.
Called it a weaponization of government.
Strong words.
That's a serious accusation.
It is.
But is it an isolated incident or a sign of something bigger?
Well, you
Yeah.
also included a perspective from Adam Smith.
The Savage Operations founder.
That's right. He's been on the ground during these hurricane relief efforts.
What was his take?
He's calling for a complete overhaul of FEMA, saying it's plagued by bureaucratic inefficiencies and slow response times.
Okay.
He argues that the agency just isn't equipped to handle these kinds of disasters.
So is he saying the bias was intentional
Hard to say.
or just a symptom of a larger problem?
I think what's clear is that this incident, combined with Smith's critique,
Yeah.
raises serious questions about the impartiality and effectiveness of government agencies in disaster situations.
It's unsettling.
It is unsettling.
To think that something like disaster relief could become politicized.
I agree.
It speaks to a broader erosion of trust
Oh, absolutely.
in institutions.
Across society.
But it's not the only example of this post-election polarization spilling over.
It's not.
Let's talk about immigration.
You included a few sources on Trump's deportation plans.
Right.
And it's clear this is going to be a major flashpoint.
Yeah.
Some state officials are already gearing up for legal battles,
I can see that happening.
vowing to resist.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
States' rights versus federal authority.
Exactly.
And, you got to wonder about the Border Patrol agents, too.
Boots on the ground?
Yeah, how is this all going to play out for them?
Right. We talked about morale being a concern in recent years.
Big time.
And you included a statement from Art Del Cueto,
Oh, right.
Vice president of the National Border Patrol Council.
Big voice in that community.
What's his take?
Well, according to Del Cueto, the majority of agents are ecstatic about Trump's victory.
Really?
They believe he understands their challenges and supports their work.
So they're anticipating a shift in strategy,
Oh, yeah.
probably a more hardline approach,
Safe bet.
and that could have a ripple effect, huh?
Oh, definitely.
Not just on those crossing the border,
Right.
but the communities on both sides.
Absolutely. It's a complex situation.
No easy answers.
Not at all.
But while we're talking about the impact of Trump's policies,
Yeah.
we can't ignore the economic anxieties that fueled his victory.
You're right.
Inflation was a constant theme.
Oh, yeah.
It's something voters are really worried about.
For sure.
So what will Trump do about it?
That is the question.
Will he go back to the traditional Republican playbook?
Tax cuts.
Tax cuts and deregulation?
Oh.
Or will we see a return of his more populist economic policies?
Like from his first term.
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
And you included some perspectives that really highlight the tension
Between these two approaches.
Yeah.
Some see Trump as a champion of the working class, while others say his policies help the wealthy at the expense of everyday Americans.
Yeah, it seems like he's trying to walk a tightrope,
He is.
appeal to both sides.
It's a tough balancing act.
But if inflation keeps rising,
Yeah.
he'll have to choose a direction.
He will.
And those choices will have real consequences.
Absolutely. For millions of Americans.
Speaking of consequences,
Yes.
that alleged Iranian plot,
Right.
it's not just a domestic issue.
No.
Huge implications for foreign policy.
National security.
You know, I was just thinking about that.
What's that?
What kind of message does this send to other countries,
That's interesting.
especially those considering challenging the U.S.
It really underscores the volatility.
on the world stage?
Yeah, the geopolitical landscape right now.
And it throws a wrench into the whole debate about America's role in the world.
Right, a debate that was so central to the election.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Trump's foreign policy in his first term was, well,
Unpredictable,
unpredictable.
to say the least.
He campaigned on America first, advocating for a more isolationist approach.
But will he be able to stick to that?
That's the question, isn't it?
Given everything that's happening.
This Iranian plot, if it's true,
Yeah.
it could force his hand
Escalate tensions.
with Iran.
Drag the U.S. back into the Middle East.
So much for America first.
Right.
More like America back in the thick of it.
It's a possibility.
But let's shift gears for a second.
Okay.
Back to that FEMA controversy.
The famous
It's like a microcosm of the political divisions.
across the country.
You're saying that incident
Yeah.
where a government official allegedly told aid workers to discriminate
Based on political affiliation.
is a symptom of a much deeper problem
Exactly. An erosion of trust.
in our institutions.
Across the board.
And it's not just FEMA.
No.
We're seeing similar concerns about bias
Politicization.
in other areas of government,
Like law enforcement.
education.
It's a trend that should concern everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of your political beliefs.
If people lose faith in their institutions,
Right.
it creates fertile ground for extremism,
Social unrest.
and it makes it nearly impossible to find common ground.
To address the challenges we face as a nation,
Which brings us back to the question,
Yeah.
where do we go from here?
how do we bridge these divides?
How do we start to heal?
Big questions.
I wish I had a magic wand
Right.
to make it all better.
Unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
That's the truth.
But I think it starts with recognizing each other's humanity, even when we disagree,
Yeah, it's so easy to demonize the other side.
especially on social media.
Right, but if we want solutions,
Yeah.
we need to listen,
Empathize.
engage in dialogue.
Respectful dialogue.
I've been trying to do that more myself.
Me too.
It's easy to stay in your bubble,
It is.
but you learn so much more when you step outside of it.
That's where growth happens.
Right.
When we expose ourselves to different views,
Yeah.
we broaden our understanding.
Become more equipped to navigate a complex world.
Exactly.
Who knows, we might even find some common ground.
You never know.
But it also feels like there's a systemic element to all of this.
There is.
Like that FEMA controversy
Yeah, it raises questions.
about how our institutions operate.
Exactly. We need to hold those in power accountable,
Make sure our institutions are serving the people.
not pushing an agenda.
And that goes beyond FEMA.
It does.
It's about transparency and integrity
across the board.
at every level of government.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about systemic issues,
Yeah.
immigration,
Border security.
we need solutions that are both comprehensive and humane.
Right.
Address the root causes of migration.
while upholding the rule of law.
It's a delicate balance to strike.
It is.
It feels like we're stuck
In this cycle
of finger-pointing and bickering.
Yeah.
How do we break free and actually make progress?
Well, it starts with dialogue.
Okay.
Informed, respectful,
thoughtful
dialogue where people are actually listening.
Trying to understand.
Different perspectives. We need to disagree without demonizing each other.
That's easier said than done.
It is.
But it's a starting point.
I agree.
And maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
by having those tough conversations
We can start to rebuild trust
in each other.
in our institutions.
It's a long road ahead.
It is.
But I'm optimistic.
Me too.
I believe that if we can tap into those core values,
Empathy,
compassion,
civic responsibility.
we can build a better future.
For everyone.
You've given me a lot to think about.
I'm glad.
As we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listener to take away?
You know, I think it's this. We're all in this together. We may have different visions for the future,
Yeah.
but we're all part of the same story.
The same human story.
And that shared humanity.
Yeah.
It's something worth celebrating and protecting.
It is, yeah. It's a good reminder that even in these crazy times, there's still good out there.
Yeah.
People willing to cross the aisle, bridge the divide.
It's inspiring.
Makes you realize we're not just spectators in all of this.
Right.
We have a role to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely.
But it can feel overwhelming, you know?
I get it.
Like, where do you even begin to make a difference?
It starts with each of us, I think,
Good.
taking responsibility for our actions and for the future we want to see.
So challenge our assumptions,
Exactly.
engage with different viewpoints.
I've been trying to do that more. It's easy to stay in your bubble,
It is.
but you learn so much more when you step outside.
That's where the real growth happens, right?
Absolutely.
We broaden our understanding.
Become more equipped to deal with a complex world,
Exactly.
and you might even discover some common ground
I like that.
along the way.
But there's also a systemic element to this, isn't there?
There is.
Like, take that FEMA controversy.
Yeah, a perfect example.
Raises questions about how our institutions are working, you know?
We need to hold those in power accountable.
Right. Make sure they're serving the people.
Not just pushing their own agenda
Transparency and integrity.
at every level.
And we can't ignore immigration and border security either.
No, those are big ones.
We need solutions that are comprehensive, but also humane.
Right. Address the root causes.
Uphold the rule of law.
It's a tough balance.
It is. It feels like we're just stuck in this cycle.
This back and forth.
Yeah. Finger pointing, bickering.
How do we break free?
How do we make actual progress?
Dialogue.
Informed, respectful dialogue
Respectful dialogue.
where people are listening.
Trying to
There's
understand.
different perspectives.
Disagreeing without demonizing.
Easier said than done.
It is.
But it's a start.
a starting point.
Maybe through those conversations,
Yeah.
we can start to rebuild trust
in each other.
in our institutions.
It's a long road,
It is.
but I'm optimistic.
Me too.
I have to be.
I think if we tap into those core values,
Empathy, compassion,
civic responsibility
we can build a better future.
for everyone.
You've given me a lot to think about.
Good.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the post-election world,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you want our listener to take away?
I want them to remember this. We're all in this together.
We are.
We may have different ideas about the future,
Yeah.
but we're all part of the same human story.
The same story.
And that shared humanity is something worth celebrating
It is.
and protecting.
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Thank you. And on that note, we'll leave you with this thought. Don't be afraid to engage.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to listen.
Don't be afraid to hope.
Because even in these divided times,
Mm,
there's still so much we can accomplish together.
I believe that.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.